There we go.
Good morning. Welcome to a late breaking version of B Cube Sunday morning. I pressed the live button earlier while we were chatting with Elizabeth Ann Scarborough, who's joining us, and it said we're sorry, we have an unexpected error. Now, I think that what it really was, we've overloaded the system with the star power we're have on the show today. We've got Louise, Marley. And Ciiff is going to be our host, and so I'm going to let Ciiff go through and let Louise tell us about all the incredible work she's done and the incredible work she did for us. Now, I will bring out that you may recall 8 years ago, we published a book called Alternative Truths. And Louise, you sold me a story, something about the scent of oranges.
Yeah, it was called Relics.
I will still go down with the notion that if I ever do a best of B Cubed, that story's in there because it is one of the most delicate, beautiful, touching stories I've ever read and had the honor of publishing. And so that said, I'm going to leave and let you and Ciiff chat while I go find Elizabeth and bring her back.
Good. That's good.
Okay.
I'm going to have to put my glasses on so I can see all the lovely people who are here.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
Nice. Hi, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. Where did Louise go?
I don't know. I'm here. I saw Louise a minute ago.
Oops.
Louise.
Wow, hit the wrong button. Ah, wonderful.
There she is.
All right.
I have to be on because I put on my lipstick. So if I put on lipstick, that means I'm working.
That's a serious interview. Do you do that to go to the computer and type out your books? Or?
I put on my patriotic jewelry today
when you're writing. All right. So good morning. Welcome to the slightly delayed due to technical difficulties B Cube Sunday morning, third Sunday. I have two wonderful guests on today. First, I'll start with Louise. She was on before the first. Well, Louise Marley is the author of quite a number of books, like The Terrorists of Iristan, The Glass Harmonica, The Glass Butterfly, The Brahms Deception. If you're sensing a musical theme, that's because she used to be an opera singer. So she knows from the inside what that's like. She has also written a number of historical fantasies under the name Louisa Morgan, like A Secret History of Witches and The Witch's Kind and The Age of Witches. Is there a fourth one?
There are 3 witch books and 1 ghost book.
Ghost book.
That's
why I'm thinking.
Yeah. Actually, it's in the background there. The Ghost of Beatrice Bird is also a Louisa Morgan book.
Nice. And
also The Great Witch of Brittany. So there's 4 witch books.
That was the one I was.
Yeah.
I was.
Cool.
I knew there was one more.
I love that book. So.
All righty. And she has also written not 1 but 2 stories that are in the about to be released, as in tomorrow, B Cubed Press anthology Alternative Liberties, which we will be talking about. And my other guest here is the wonderful Elizabeth Ann Scarborough. Ann is the author of several collaborations with Anne McCaffrey. And so she knows from dragons, which is going to be important. She is also the author of the songs from the Seashell Archives Quintet, which has 6 books. So it's like the Hitchhiker's Guide trilogy with 5 books. The Drastic Dragon series, the Songkiller Saga, the Godmother series, Cleopatra, Spam the Cat, which I haven't read, but that sounds interesting just from the name, and is the author of the Nebula Award-winning novel The Healer's War, on which she drew on her own life experience as a nurse during the Vietnam War in Vietnam. So welcome, Anne and Louise. And Anne also has, surprise, surprise, a story in Alternative Liberties that features, surprise, surprise, a dragon.
I think I must be the designated comic relief in that.
Yeah, well, yeah, then we have a couple of those. It's got a dragon and a golden toilet, which I don't believe has ever been written about in the history of literature since, Gilgamesh. Plus,
I invented an institution just for J.D. Vance, Our Lady of Perpetual Conception.
Yes, right. Just for J.D. Vance, who should be institutionalized.
That's true. Anyway,
yeah. Welcome. Okay, so you are both really storied writers with a lot of stories that you've written. And so I guess my first question would be something along the lines of, what's a nice girl like you doing in a book like this? Anyone want to field that?
Yeah,
Louise,
I don't
two
write
times.
very
Go
much
ahead.
short fiction, but when I heard that Bob was doing another one of these, I was so excited because, like all the other amazing writers that are collected in this book, I have a lot to say, and I prefer to say it in fiction than any other way, although I'm known to be pretty loud in other forms as well.
Well, you can sing opera, so presumably you can project.
Well, I used to be able to sing opera. Turns out if you don't keep it up, you can't do it anymore.
The only thing I know about opera is they say that it's about anything that you sing anything that's too silly to say.
Oh, well, for some of them, that is really true. There are some exceptions. But
well, Trump's presidency ought to be one of those, I think.
Oh, yeah. That would be a comic opera for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite say, I will do a slight digression because this is a BQ podcast. My favorite ridiculous aria in all of the opera canon is in Otello when Desdemona is mortally strangled.
Right.
Between the mortal strangulation and her actual expiration, it's an aria. So
that's breath control, man. That's breath control.
With whatever breath she doesn't have, she belts out an aria. Usually in some awful position like that, which is
People
acrobatic.
don't really want to talk about opera, I know, but I have to say, the most ridiculous opera in the canon, with some of the most sublime music, is The Magic Flute.
Mozart. Oh, I've heard about that.
The story is
propaganda.
See, that's what I mean. Great music, stupid story. But
that's this weird Masonic allegory thing with a Birdman and.
Oh, you do know your opera, Cliff. I'm so impressed.
I've only seen one, and it was the one with the ladies with the Viking horns, I think.
Oh, not Wagner. Oh dear.
I actually love.
I don't know. I don't think it may not have been Wagner. It was somebody else. It was a lady's name. That's okay. But I'm ignorant.
So anyway, people probably didn't come to hear us talk about opera.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, and Andrew Roberts in the comments, of course, killed a wabbit, which is the best opera from What's Opera Doc. Yeah. Okay, Anne, how did you get involved in this book? Oh no, Anne has frozen. There you are. You're having some buffering issues there.
Oh, okay. I don't see it on my screen, so
that's okay.
I
we
see
can hear
me,
you,
but I don't see the buffering problem. Just before I got on, I think Bob said something about he was now used to be an American citizen, and he's now the subject of a despot. And I said, well, I was born here and raised here of folks who've been here for a long time, and I'm a military Vietnam veteran, and if anybody's going to go, he can. So that's how I got into the anthology. That's my attitude.
Nice. All right. So let's talk without, giving away the endings. about your stories in Alternative Liberties. We'll start there. Well, first, let's talk briefly about what Alternative Liberties is. I will do that pitch. So, on election night, Wayback Machine, Mr. Peabody, on election night, which is only 2.5 months ago.
Oh, God.
And if you know production schedules of books, this is insane. You know, I was here, both in this room and on B Cubed Press, doing a special election night coverage from B Cubed, various people, and it did not go how we hoped. And Bob conceived an anthology whose working title was Retribution and Revenge, about like a second Trump administration and the implications thereof. And he announced that we were going to do that. I don't know if he announced it on the air, but he told us he's going to do it, and it's going to be out by Inauguration Day, which is a very, 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 very compressed production schedule. And in order to manage it, he pulled in 5 other editors to work in parallel, and I was one of them. And this is my first time actually editing a book.
Wow, really?
I was assigned. I was lucky enough to be assigned both of Louise's stories to edit, and I have a ton of critique background going back to Clarion, and a bunch of I've taught writing workshops at cons and things like that. But I hadn't actually been an editor before, which is a slightly different thing.
Yeah, a little different, isn't it?
Yeah, because like the power dynamic is a little different.
No, but it worked out great. We did really well together.
Yeah, well, you gave us very clean copy to begin with, so that helped a lot.
It's the least I can do. Isn't
the
it,
thing
Anne?
that was hard
It's the
for
least
me
you can do.
during the editing process, because we were using track changes in Microsoft Word, if anyone has used that. Normally when I critique, I say all the good things I liked about it. And when I was editing, all I was doing was like complaining about stuff. And that was, you know, I wanted to just write like in the margins, this is wonderful, love that turn of phrase, this is great, you know. So you could just imagine me doing that in my head when I was reading your stories. So we did the book, and it's coming out, and it's got a lovely cover that I'm sure Bob will show you at some point. And the Kindle version is already up for pre-order. The paperback is not yet up for pre-order. And we are planning, actually, if your preferred e-reader is like buying Apple Books, or if you are a Barnes & Noble Nook reader, whatever, we're planning to actually release this in all those formats. And if you, for accessibility issues, we're going to release an audio version. So at some point down the road, which we did with the last one, Southern Truths, which is a book I have a story in. So here we are today with 2 of the authors from that book, and we're going to talk about their stories. So that's the background. So Louise, you gave us 2 stories, one of which is not science fiction at all. It is mainstream literary fiction that takes place in late November of 2024. Do you want to talk about, and that one, boy, the rage came through on the page really well on that one.
I think it's such a short piece. I think if I talk about it, I'll just give away the farm. So,
yeah, well, let's see. What could you talk? You can talk about, it's a woman who's very angry with her husband.
A woman is very angry.
Her husband
with
has
her husband.
behaved
And
badly.
actually, I was inspired by, I recently moved to Oregon, and in my lovely little town, I have a wonderful neighbor. I'm assuming she's not listening to me. I won't say anything. I mean, I love her. She's great. And she found out after the election that her husband had voted the wrong way. And they had an epic, they've been married a long time. They had an epic fight. They're still okay. They're going to be fine. But oh my goodness. It got me thinking about how enraging it can be. And I'll just give a little anecdote that has nothing to do with my story. But my late husband was a lifelong Republican, ex-military, Air Force captain.
Wow.
And when I was never politically aware until George W. Bush invaded Iraq for no reason, and my son had just turned 18, my only child. And boy, I was propelled instantly into political activism. And my darling husband and I argued and argued and argued and argued. And so when it came time to vote for Barack Obama, my husband gave me his ballot to mail. And I said, don't give it to me. I said, I don't trust myself to mail your vote. And he gave me this, he was a jokester. He gave me this big grin and he said, okay, I'll mail it. And he waited until he got home that night to tell me that he had voted for Barack Obama.
Yay!
I was like, oh, my marriage is saved.
A lot of Republicans voted
exactly
for Barack
what
Obama.
Jake would do. Was just such a funny guy, and he knew how to push my buttons. So these are all things that I now have a QR code in front of my face.
You do.
Yeah,
You're
that happens
welcome.
occasionally
Yeah.
on this
Well,
podcast.
you're not going to get much if you click on my face. So
Well, I think the QR code is for,
I'm sure it's for the
book.
well,
It's on my face now, which is great. So, Anne, why don't you talk about how you got into the book and why a dragon?
Well, Bob's story for a good reason. I don't wish that. But
You're breaking up a little bit. Okay, good. Now you're good.
but if a dragon just swooped in and obliterated a certain party, I wouldn't mind. And
Right, you
So
can get
I was
get
kind
away
of-
with a lot of satire that you can't get away with any other way.
yeah, anyhow, that's kind of what happens in my story. And it's from the viewpoint of a couple of podcasters. One of whose
Ernie and
sisters-
Bert.
Bert and Ernie, that was Bob's contribution.
Oh.
'Cause I wasn't sure what to name those guys, they're but he said Bert and Ernie, so I stuck with that. One of them
I thought that was great.
is incarcerated at which is
Ooh,
or
and we're losing you vocally. What she said that one of them's sister is incarcerated at Our Lady of Perpetual Conception, which is
Yes.
a breeding farm in Trump Vance America. So,
Yeah.
but we lost you. Your vocals went out again. So if you want to pick up the
I
thread,
didn't
that's
say much
fine.
after that, actually. But anyway, I don't want to give away my story either, but there is more to it than that. Anyhow, there is a dragon involved. And dragons, if you've done any research reading, the traditional earth dragons are, in literature, they're the guardians of the earth. They are guardians of water. They very full of gems and that kind of thing. They have several reasons, several issues with the God Emperor of the universe. So
Which is the name of the story, the death of the God Emperor of the universe.
the death of the God Emperor of the universe is kind of a little bit
I love
Agatha
it.
Christie, so
it's worth it for the title.
The title tells you what kind of story you're in for.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I have-
And then, yeah.
I was going to say I have to credit Shelley Shapiro, who was Anne's editor at Random House, because she said she had always wanted to be God Empress of the universe. Idea. So
Cool. All right. So, Louise, we have talked about one of your two stories.
Yes.
The other story is science fiction
It is.
and you did something that you can do in short stories, which is like play with form. And you gave us a doctoral thesis submission, right? A thesis to a doctoral committee. You're submitting your thesis proposal. That's the word I'm looking for. Thesis proposal.
Yeah, you taught me the difference of you talk about.
Yeah, well, I got a master's, but I never got a PhD, so I wrote a master's report or master's thesis and did not write a dissertation.
And I think I told you my master's thesis was a recital. So
Right, which is very different.
yeah.
Yeah, I was
anything.
actually an ethnomusicology, so
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, so music related,
I
but
have a BS
more
and I studied ethnomusicology, so you know.
That's
Nice.
right, because you use that a lot in your novels. I know. Can I just tell Amy, who said something nice about the other story that we talked about?
Yeah, please.
I'm sort of trying to, because the comments are fabulous, so I'm kind of trying to follow along. But I
Yeah,
wanted to tell
Amy
her
Wolf liked it.
it was very difficult to figure out how to burn golf clubs. I just want to say.
Tell me about the research process. How many golf clubs died in the service of this story?
Yeah. Nobody, I mean, I'm sure that Google is like, what is this woman doing?
No, the golf club. What made Bob and me sad was the comic books.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
that would get to
That was
you.
the meanest thing. Yeah, it was. But
Which,
you know, when you're mad, you're mad.
yeah. No, it was. If I could add, it's not a major spoiler, but one of the things about the comic books that she notes that her 4-year-old loved the comics, and that she was so angry that didn't stop it. And I thought that was a really interesting character moment that tells you about this person, that how she thinks and who she is, that she's willing to upset her 4-year-old.
That
was really like, I mean, this is a moment. It's like like the poem "My Last Duchess," right, which is a moment in time, a conversation. This is a moment in her life, and I don't think it's going to go well that night. I don't think things are gonna go south really fast when Rocky comes home. But for both of them, I think. But it's that moment. It's a pure moment of rage, right? And I appreciated the thoroughness with which you depicted that.
So that story is about rage, which a lot of us are feeling, and hopefully it's not going to be as bad as we fear. And then the other story that I submitted, the one that, as you say, is a proposal,
which is about it being as bad as we fear.
which is about, and that one is about grief, really. Not to put anybody off the story. It's really short. You don't have to be sad for very long. But it's just a different reaction.
It's at a remove. It's decades later.
Yes, 2 generations.
Yeah.
2 generations later. A lot can happen in 2 generations.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sorry, Ann, we didn't quite catch that. Your voice went off again.
The baffled historians that I've been imagining while going through this period in U.S. history. It's I think that people are going to look back on this. I hope they'll be able to look back on this and just go, huh?
Yeah, I looked back on that the day after and went, huh? Right?
Yeah.
Part of Louise's story is that records have been, carefully excised from this time.
Yes.
This is the thing that I'm worried. I think we're all worried about that, and that's why I think nobody said this to me for a while, but during the first 4 miserable years of that person, somebody in my agent's office was assigned to check out my social media, I guess. And she said, it would be better if Louise were to stay neutral. And my response to that was, wait a minute, we're writers. We're the ones who can use our words. If we don't speak out, who's going to do it for us? We can't be constantly passing the buck to other people. So I do think that a collection like this, an anthology like this one that you guys have put together, is a big part of keeping alive the spirit. And let's remember too, okay, I shouldn't get on a political rant, but I guess that's what this
Go
is
for
about.
it.
We have to remember, we have to keep telling people the margin of victory was as razor thin. And although I think we're all terribly disappointed in about 70 million of our fellow Americans, there are a whole bunch of people who it just wasn't that many more. And actually, my tinfoil hat is in the cupboard, so I won't get it out right now. But I'm not entirely sure that actually he actually won. But that's maybe another discussion.
Yes.
So anyway, I just think we need to remember that, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and we have a road to travel. And if we get too miserable and too talking too much doom speak, that doesn't help. That doesn't help the cause. We need to keep picturing good things and remembering that it's a bare majority that actually made this happen.
They're kind of hard to remember right now.
I know.
The good things. Hey, I'm going to tell you something. I wasn't going to say anything, but I read the first 3 stories. Your first story, and Adam, Troy Castro or Castro Troy?
Adam Troy Castro.
Troy Castro.
Adam Troy Castro.
His story, which was,
it was devastating.
horrible. Yeah. Oh God. And Jim's introduction, and I really had to stop reading. I really wanted to read the whole book, but I had to stop reading at that point and go find some comedy, because I was just, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I have PTSD. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need to have somebody else echo my thoughts, which are bad enough. You talk about our book, it being, in writing. This is the first thing that gets destroyed in an what are they calling it? Oligarchy or a society. And like I'm sure you have, and Adam has, I've read a lot about what happens to people during times like that. And one of my earliest friends when I moved to Port Townsend was Bill Ransom, who wrote with Frank Herbert, and was also a witness for peace in Central America. And he told me a lot of what had happened down there. And so that, coupled with my own imagination, it hit me. I didn't write about it because writing Healer's War was hard enough. I don't want to dwell on it, but it's bringing up a lot of stuff for me.
Yeah, it was a tough read. So for those who haven't seen the book yet, which I'm sure is most of the audience, it opens with, I've got like a 1-page forward, and then we dive into Jim Wright's essay that he wrote the day after the election, which is very raw and very powerful. And then Andrew Roberts' first of his 2 poems, which is kind of a call to action. It's for writers and creators, artists, musicians, to use art as a resistance, right? And it's just wonderful, and it is a nice contrast. And then we dive into one of I think maybe the hardest story in the book, which is Adam Troy Castro's story, and it is, like what Jenna Hammond Moore said, it's devastating. But then we go into some comedy, and so it's all over the map. We tried to.
Where's the comedy other than me? Yeah,
there is some.
Cliff?
Yeah,
Cliff,
yes, absolutely.
Who else has comedy?
I'm sorry.
I want to read it. Who else is doing comedy? Because I want to read it.
I would have to look at my ebook.
Something else we haven't really mentioned, although the people that follow this broadcast probably know, is that this is like the 8th in the alternate series. And the first one, Louise, was that your story that was the border story in the first one?
With the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, people who lived in the wall and it was constantly under construction.
Yes, that was a wonderful story.
Well, thank you very much. Thank God it didn't come true. So
Yeah, really.
'cause
Well,
they hardly built any of the wall. They wasted a lot of money on it.
we have four.
And you could,
We have
I
4
think I could
years.
go and push it over with my hand.
So there are a few.
Well, Biden
There's a
sold
lighter one called Animal Control by Jonathan Ehrman, in which a duck walks into a video store. So I mean
Did he
that's
have a rabbi and a priest with him?
no, just a duck, just a talking duck
No.
who wants to rent a video. In that future history, because media can be listened to by the state. People have gone back to renting VHS movies because their viewing can't be tracked quite the same way. And so there's like
Well, that's
this
an
guy,
idea. Yeah.
the protagonist is like a clerk in a video store, like a Blockbuster, like an old Blockbuster.
But they're all
But they also have
closed.
talking animals. So
They
anyway,
have to bring those back.
yeah.
Well, see,
Well, that was the idea.
that's the problem with art is they can destroy it, and in Adam's story, they're destroying the artist as well, in a very nasty way. So not that being destroyed isn't nasty anyway, but it's really a slow torture. So.
And so there's one that's also not comedy, but it's positive. It's called Preacher Feature, by Mike Admison in Australia.
Oh, cool.
Australia, and it features a kind of V style interruption broadcast, by a preacher who preaches at people and changes how the United States is going. And so it's got a positive thing, but I will give you a little content warning. He does mention some images from the Vietnam War, including the Pulitzer Prize winning Nick Ut photograph called "The Horrors of War" or "Napalm Girl."
Yeah,
So,
I remember that photo.
I think anyone who's seen that photo remembers
Actually,
that.
You never
something people
forget it,
don't
no.
know I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War. Half of my patients, I was an Army nurse, and half of my patients were Vietnamese civilians who got caught in the crossfire. So
Yeah.
I have a big connection with the not only the people of Israel but the people of Gaza as well, because there are a lot of people that were caught in the crossfire there. But also,
Mark Rivet's Care. Bob just posted. There's a story called Care, all caps CARE, by Mark Rivet that is also humorous.
Good.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but yes, people caught in the crossfire of war. It is. Yeah. I mean that's.
Yeah, I used to think it was all guys in uniforms with guns, fighting other guys in uniforms with guns, and it's not. It's everybody who's in the way getting mowed down.
And we're seeing that in Ukraine, and
Yeah, well, and Ukraine, at least they were picking on everybody in the country to begin with. It wasn't ever guys with guns and uniforms against other guys with, because the Ukrainians weren't. They were all civilians to begin with. I guess they had soldiers too, but there were like the dancer who volunteered and a lot of celebrities. I think there was a singer, other artists who volunteered for the army, and many of them died. But they
they
were
just regular folk.
They were regular folks, but you have to be a patriot, or you have to leave.
Yeah.
Well,
in Israel, it's mandatory service, so the
what we're
entire
seeing
year.
is that
But they mowed down a lot of civilians, a lot of whom were peace activists.
Yeah.
we're making war easier with drones because people don't have to go and stand in front of somebody and murder them. They can do it remotely, and that really worries me. Because
Yeah.
There was a line in The Once and Future King that Merlin said that he thought that people should not be allowed to kill each other at a distance, that they had to be able to look into the eyes of their victims.
Yes.
Right.
So it was
Actually,
sort of his end. Go ahead, Louise. I'm sorry.
Well, that's interesting because I had forgotten that line. And in my book that's coming in the fall, I actually wrote a line very like that by, well, we call him Lancelot, who said in my book, who says, when you kill a man, you have to face him. You don't kill him from behind. And
Yeah.
or words, I wrote it better in the book. But so that's
Well-
funny. I hadn't remembered that from the Once and
I
Future King.
I don't know if anybody saw the Hanoi Hilton movie that was basically about John McCain and about prisoners of war in Vietnam. But McCain and he was a Republican, but I admire the guy because he was a stand-up guy, a prisoner of war. And
Yeah. I had a housemate who served on the aircraft carrier named for his father.
Oh,
I have a friend in the Navy who really well, she was a Navy chief petty officer, and she is a fan too of the boat, of the ship. Anyhow, what I started to say about that was that some of the aviators have a really hard time after, and I think he was the one who brought this up in the movie, because you don't see the people that you're killing. You know, you feel like you're innocent. What did I do? I just dropped a few tons of ammunition on people, you know.
Right.
And you don't see those wounds, but I saw them. They're there.
of course.
Yeah.
If the person survived, you know, we saw them because, I mean, one thing you can say for the country as it has been is we try, at least some of us try to repair the damage that we do as a power, you know. I'm not sure it's going to go forward like that, but I mean, I wish that we wouldn't do horrible things to other people to begin with, but if we do, at least we send in and make provisions for them.
Yeah. So,
you know, to try to help.
you were reminding me of a wonderful story by Kim Stanley Robinson called The Lucky Strike,
I'm a
which
fan
was
of his,
collected in the fabulous PM Press, fabulous series, edited initially by Terry Bisson, and I think Nick Mamatas has taken over that series, but it's called The Lucky Strike and Other Stories. And what it is, it's an alternate history, a la Harry Turtledove, who is in our book. Just thought I'd throw that in. It's an alternate history in which, right, exactly. But this is Stan Robinson. In which the Enola Gay, I forget the reason, the Enola Gay is unable to fly its Hiroshima mission, and there was either the crew had a problem or the ship or the plane had a problem, but the backup, and in real life the backup crew was the Lucky Strike, and so in the fictional version of this alternate history, the Lucky Strike goes on the Hiroshima bombing mission, and the bombardier refuses to drop it on the city. He drops it in the bay instead, and is, you know, spoiler alert, executed for treason at the end of the story. But that's what the story is about. It's about somebody who has that vision of the real effect of a bomb that you're dropping from so high in the air that affects so many people that it's very abstract.
Yeah, and you wanted to be an aviator, you know. So,
yeah. Anyway, I highly recommend that entire series, initially edited by. Each book it's a little book. You can get them as an ebook and a paperback. It's by PM Press. They're local to me in the Bay Area, Anarchist Press, and they released each one is a different author. It includes an interview with the author as well as some of their works, and it's just got a ton of fabulous left-leaning authors in it, including Stan. So Alan Diane Shapiro says The Lucky Strike is one of my favorite alt history stories ever. I agree. It's
I'll have to read that one. I'll have to read that one. I haven't.
Yeah. So anyway, and so Bob mentioned Care, which is a humorous broadcast. There's also a story that I'm very proud of, the final version, especially, where there's a guy who is like this super, and Bob will remember the title. I'm forgetting, but he wakes up in the morning and he goes to the grocery store and finds seditious groceries and has them removed, and he's like ready to do Trump's bidding and every day. And that's kind of, yeah. Well, I don't know, whatever. It would have some seditious element on the box or packaging, according to this
Oh, I
guy.
see.
And in the story, you wind up, and again, I'm blanking on the name, is Bob, come to my rescue. What's the name of that story? You become aware that everyone is humoring this old guy, right?
Mhm.
He's like a total, Trumpist, and he has all the commemorative coins and that he polishes every day and all of this stuff. He's one of those. And it's a lighter piece, but there's also that sadness, right? Which is the beauty of it, that it's like, okay, we'll take care of it. Don't worry. Thank you for your patriotic work, and
So that makes me think of all the people who spent, all the megas, who spent thousands of dollars to go to Washington, D.C. to see the inauguration, and now they don't get to.
Yeah, I saw a couple of
And I'm
Okie
just thinking,
farmers yesterday.
So don't tell us that your complaint was that eggs were too expensive, never mind avian flu. But
you can apparently spend
don't
five.
tell us you can't afford eggs, but you can afford $5,000 to go to DC to
Right.
see an inauguration. And did you really think anyone was going to care?
And who is feeding your cows while you're gone,
I know. I saw that guy. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Maybe there were only 3 of them to begin with. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious that they came up with this thing like, well, we have security concerns. No, you don't. You have small crowd concerns.
Yes.
And that's
Size matters,
that is-
and this is a size thing.
He has cold weather concerns, and yet he wants to annex Greenland and Canada.
Yeah.
Somebody
right.
ought to tell him the weather report from those places,
It's not about the weather prediction. It's about the size prediction of the crowds.
Well, I would say he should go on a goodwill tour of Greenland and northern Canada, except that I know Canada won't let him in, and maybe Denmark won't because he's a convicted felon. So, Anyway, one of the things I was thinking of earlier, especially with the Vietnam War and stuff, is that I'm old enough as a kid to have memories of Agnew and Nixon and what happened to them, right? And how different it was than what happened to Trump based on,
what? I guess I'm too liberal or something, but I think of poor old Bill Clinton, who was a great president, but got arrested for having a sexual act performed upon his person. He was a willing participant. I'm not saying he wasn't, but for that he got impeached.
Right.
Compared to Trump,
Yeah, trying to take over the United States versus.
He was a freaking angel. It wasn't rape. It wasn't child molesting. It was just a sex act. And
So
compared to this one, so our standards have changed, I guess.
Well, I think that the work that we're doing with, these are fictional stories, but they should, if anyone who is not of our way of thinking already were to pick up a book, maybe it would actually open some eyes. Because I think the problem we have, and this I learned from watching what my neighbor has gone through with her very, very nice husband, it's they don't know, they're not aware. If they only watch Fox News and news,
it's 2 different worlds.
They're never going to know this stuff. And so all of us are like, we've got both feet in the water all the time, to the point that I have to, since all of this happened, I've had to cut myself off after I'll read the morning news and then stop, or I will have no life.
I've been watching YouTube.
I think that, so the problem that we have is one of trying to inform people, but you can't grab them on the street and make them listen to you. So, and my brother feels that this is very much a Democratic Party failure. And I'm not sure that I disagree. I'm sort of like, I'm not quite sure what they could have done differently, but.
There's no left-wing media, ecosystem like there is right-wing.
Right.
Not to that extent. There's a few things. But
MSNBC gets close, but.
That's still center left.
Yeah. Well,
yes, what Jenna is saying is correct. Can't hear it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, Anne, we lost your voice again.
I didn't say much. I was
Ironically,
trying to read Jenna's
fine.
post.
Yeah, Jenna says that she was reading a piece about news deserts, and I think that that people who live in news deserts overwhelmingly voted for Trump, and I think that illustrates it perfectly. They just, I don't want to say that they're being stupid, but they're not informed. And ignorant sounds pejorative, but really it just means they haven't heard anything.
You know, to some
Sometimes
extent,
I wonder if people are coming up with all this stuff, you know?
I have a friend in Alabama who was a high school friend that I've kept up with, and he is now a MAGA Republican. And we had, I went to school in Tennessee. This is an occupational hazard.
Yeah,
so he was a high school friend.
graphical hazard, yeah.
Yeah, and so he and I had many discussions leading up to the election. And one of the things I did was I sent him the 95-page Jack Smith immunity brief, which goes in detail about how he was going to prosecute and why this evidence and that evidence and this other evidence did not fall into the immunity clause based on the Supreme Court, right? And he wouldn't read it. He wouldn't look at it, right? Like I literally, like, here's a PDF, right? Here's a podcast where they read it out loud to you. Which was the Jack podcast by the woman who does Miller, She Wrote, and an ex-acting director of the FBI. They know what they're talking about.
I have two things too. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it. But so it's not like he didn't have access to the data, right?
Yeah.
What I was fighting was his daily intake of right-wing podcasts, which formulate his opinion. Like, you know, he had the opinion that Kamala Harris was stupid because that's the right wing. And I'm like, no, I live in California. I have been following her since she was Attorney General of California, and she is super smart, like really smart, like super sharp. And we had this, like, you know.
Yeah, but Cliff, she committed two ultimate sins. One, she's a woman,
and the other,
two,
she's black.
She's black.
Yeah.
Well, I think she gives some guys smart ex-wife vibes, you know, that she reminds them of their ex-wife who could always put them down because she was smart. And
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man. You know,
I'm sorry, that's probably sexist.
no.
The thing that has helped me the most to try to understand MAGA is the I don't know if you've ever read Bandy X. Lee, who is a psychiatrist. She's one of the psychiatrists who wrote the letter Duty to Warn.
Okay.
And I think she wrote a book called that too. Psychiatrists who from a distance were analyzing Trump. But she talks about the addiction model as an explanation, which is why MAGA goes to Fox News or goes to OAN or listens to right-wing podcasts because they're addicted to the dopamine rush they get from being pissed off all the time. And those,
well, I'm pissed off all
what
the time,
those
and I don't
sources
enjoy
do is
it.
they piss them off.
Yeah.
I know, now we're pissed off, so.
Yeah. I have two things to say about what we've just been discussing. One is that I was coming out of McDonald's, and this young man I was getting to my car, and this young man 2 doors down from me said, "You married?" And he looked like he was maybe 22 or something. And I said, "Why did you want to know? Because I'm an old broad, And he said, "Well, you've got the Vietnam stickers on your car. I wondered if your husband was a veteran." I said, "No, dear, I'm a veteran. Girls are veterans too." And so we started talking. He was an Iraq veteran. And he said, "Well, who are you voting for?" And I said, "Hillary all the way, And he said, "Oh, but she did that horrible thing and is a pedophile and so on and so forth." And I said, "Obviously, you read different stuff than I've been reading, because I didn't want to be rude to another recent veteran because they have a hard enough time as it is. But I couldn't believe the stories he was telling me about Benghazi. Basically, is what it's about, and I hadn't even heard about it, so. And then I found out what it was. And then he said it was her job and she just wanted to sleep through it. She was supposed to stop that. And if she had just gotten out of bed and done her job, I said, what job do you think she should have been doing? Well, she was Secretary of Defense. I said, no, she was
Secretary of State.
No, that wasn't her job. It was among her jobs, but she wasn't the first line of defense, so.
Yeah. And when I started talking to my high school friend, like in the fall about this, right? About the election. And he started bringing up Hunter Biden's laptop. And I'm like, what? Like, in what world do I, in September of 2024, care about Hunter Biden's laptop? Right? Like, it's not a thing. It's a non-thing.
Not a thing, but they made it a thing.
But it's a thing for him. It like looms, it occupies, red-free space.
So. It was Hillary Clinton's laptop before Hunter Biden's.
Yeah,
I
her
wonder
emails.
if she just passed it on to him, Yeah.
There you go.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, buy the book. People, that's right. So here's something I will tell the world in confidence. If Alternative Liberties sells well out of the gate, we will get to do a volume 2. So I really want to do a volume 2.
Also, go back and read all the previous books because they're all good too.
Yes.
All of the other alternate books. Yeah.
They are.
But some of the stories that were submitted for this book, we have held back for volume 2, and I really want to see them published.
Well, both Louise and I have said that we have other stories. If there's more.
Yeah, right. You want more of these, women? Buy the book. Tell your friends to buy the book. Buy gift copies for everyone. They make great President's Day presents. Is that a thing? President's Day presents? It is now. They make great President's Day presents. Bob, put the QR
Martin
code
Luther
back.
King Day. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. MLK Day presents. Anything. Anything. Yeah. So, we got people in the chat saying how much they want volume 2. So buy them. Anne could buy a copy of the book for her cats that are in the background.
Yeah, one of whom is washing her rear in the background there.
Yeah, well, she'll have something to read while she's doing that.
Well,
All right. We have had such a good time that I've hardly noticed we're creeping up on the hour. Although we did start a little late, so I'm hoping they'll let us run a few minutes late. But we haven't talked much about how your own, you all have, we went over at the beginning your writing careers and some of the highlights. How do you feel like the BQ Press book and this fits into your own, interests as a writer that you have had over the years? Is there any particular, other than dragons, anything in particular? And I know you have Louise, you have a history of having interest in, like, for example, women's rights, like in the Terrorists of Iristan and things like that. So that theme I see, in your more recent work. So do you want to talk about how you feel about your stories in relation to your earlier works? This gives you a chance to talk about your earlier works.
Okay, well, my earlier work, I mean, all the books I've written, I don't set out specifically to write feminist works, but they always end up being that way. I mean, I was raised in a family where feminism is just, it's like second nature. I didn't realize till I was a lot older than a kid that feminism was a thing. So I think that these stories just are extensions of what I think about anyway. And it's really cool to get a chance to vent, to kind of, use my words to get some of this feeling that I have out, because it's a difficult time for us. But I am staying upbeat. I figure it's going to be tough for a while, but I was reading a historian just yesterday who said that the only other president who lost an election and then got voted back in had a terrible failure. So, and that was, oh gosh. Anyway, it was the end of the 19th century. I can't remember his name. Sorry, but
It
whichever
wasn't
president
Harding,
it
was it?
was it who?
Was it? I had heard something about him being a terrible president. So.
Well, I can't remember, but anyway, what happened was that in the midterms of that second presidency, everything went to hell for him. So that was comforting, and I am going to keep a good thought for all of us pulling together, circle the wagons, but help where we can.
I don't know that my thoughts for Trump are good. I really don't. But I wrote 3 serious books.
Thank you, Bob.
I wrote the Healer's War. Okay, are we off?
No,
we're on.
Tell us about the Healer's War.
Okay, after I wrote the Healer's War, they wanted a sequel, of course, and I said, no, I'm not going to another war for research. But I did find I had a dream after I saw the Hanoi Hilton, and somehow or other I crossed it with Lost Horizons. And I came up with a book called Last Refuge. Well, The Last Refuge was the second book. The first book was Nothing Sacred. And they were both about what happens after the end of the war, or after the end of the world. Why am I more freaked out by the idea that humanity is wiped out than I am that I'm going to die? Because theoretically, it's all the same to me if you're not religious. That's what you would think. So I wrote those 2 books. And I think that my stories here kind of fit in with that, my mood in that. I always have to have humor because I think I don't admire Lord Byron at all, but he had a line that is my favorite line, which is, if I laugh at any mortal thing, 'tis that I may not weep. And yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's a good place to end the discussion. I will say that I love humanity despite its flaws and wish for the best. I hope for the best for us,
Me too.
Oh, welcome back.
Well said.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Can you
Loud
hear me
and clear.
better than you could before?
No,
Oh,
I'm going to buy you a microphone.
Let me move my microphone. Okay. But, guys, as soon as I can remember how to get rid of that dang QR code.
Oh, leave it up. It's not blocking anyone. They're still using it. The nice people are still using it.
Maybe they'll use it to go buy the book.
That's what they're, yeah.
All I know, guys.
Liam,
I
yes.
think only the Kindle is up for pre-order, but there will be a paperback.
Well, the paperback, I learned a lesson on how to do all this. But every book, I mean, this is our 20-something book, but every one of them is a lesson. And every one of them is a pleasure. I mean, I already talked about how much I enjoyed The Scent of Oranges that Louise wrote us for the our very first book.
That was a winner.
Delicate and beautiful. And then Anne, you have been one of our most prolific writers, and I still love the apocalypse story. I love the story you have in here about the death of the God Emperor, but you have written us some beautiful stories over time, and I have loved every one of them. And I look forward to more, because there's discussion of book 2. And I have to be very blunt. Books are, I don't write these to make money, because at my age, what's money except for something to give the government when I die?
Wait till the next
that
government.
is the whole goal of the systems we have, to ensure that by the time we die, all of our meaningful assets are in the hands of either the government or the oligarchs, you know,
Mm.
and they might let us give a pittance to our children.
We writers contribute to the oligarchs regularly anyway, you know, so the techie
Yeah,
ones.
because let's face it, I wasn't kidding. I mean, I didn't serve my country at the level that Ann did, but I getting to be a Navy veteran and seeing the world and realizing why we were out there and what we could do and what we couldn't do uh, is a proud moment. And I'm just it kills me to think that we are being taken from being citizens of a republic to subjects of a king. And I know that sours in the mouth. I heard your comment, Ann, and but that's what
And
they
he's
would
not
have.
even a good king, you know?
Right.
He's not even a good king.
Starting off with a terrible king. Yeah.
You know.
But all I know is if you guys liked what you've heard, Monday night,
Tomorrow
tomorrow,
night.
3 to 6 p.m. We are having the B Cubed family. I like to think of y'all as family. Is gathering together, and we're doing what we're calling 5-minute readings because this book has got 46 different or 47 pieces in it, and only. Well, Nancy Jane Moore's poem, as she told me, it'll probably take her less than 5 minutes to read it since it's only 5 lines. But I think the pause that we're going to need to go through for all of the online applause to let the lights stop swirling past the page, because I will tell you guys, Louise, I mean, I've never put together a book that has got so many wonderful people. And you want to talk about, there is humor in this book. There is care, C-A-R-E, is a real funny look at how we are handling fact checking these days. In fact, we have 2 good stories.
Oh, are we
on that.
handling that?
You haven't read that one yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Care reminds me a little bit of the the weekly comic strip "This Modern World" by Tom Tomorrow, which is often satirizes media.
It's going to be, tomorrow will be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing both of you guys there. And I'm sending out the time frames for all the individual writers today. But I just know that we couldn't have done this book without you, Louise. And I mean, it is people like you that standing up and being part of things like this make a difference. Make a big difference, and I appreciate it, and thank you guys much. And I will say this: we have 6 editors on this book, myself and 5 others: Cliff, Karen Anderson, Phyllis Radford. You know, some really good people.
Lou Berger.
And Lou Berger, he
Deborah
was in
Godfrey.
there, and
Deborah Godfrey.
Deborah Godfrey. Yeah, I keep wanting to call her Deb, and she keeps getting on me for that. But the reality of it is, these people had to read almost 300 stories of doom, gloom, and despair. And so, if after reading this, because I mean, you saw the comments on Adam Troy Castro's story. If Adam Troy Castro's story doesn't make you look down the road and say, "Oh God," then I suggest you reread it, you know, or go get an empathy transplant. I'm not sure which one you'll need. So we're proud of it. It's going to be a good book. Goes live. The Kindle goes live sometime around midnight tonight, and the paperback goes live within 24 hours. And there will be a book 2, assuming we can sell book 1. And so that's why I'm saying, and we got ourselves a nice ad in Locust, by the way.
Oh,
Nice.
The
Good
first
for you.
BQ
I mean,
Press
we're
ad in
promoting-
Locust.
We're doing everything we can to promote this book because near as I can figure, if we can get 3 Hugos out of the book, we could call it a success. Maybe in a Nebula too, you know.
Sure, why not?
Why not? I mean, hey, you like your Nebula, don't you, Anne?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can use it to smack burglars in the head with. But anyway, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Bob.
Good to
Any
see you all.
closing comments, Cliff?
Just that tomorrow's BQ broadcast is 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
And it is our second ever broadcast that's outside of the normal Sunday morning. The first one was election night, and now it's inauguration day, and that's how we're.
Oh, so we can compete.
Yes, that's the idea. I mean, it's not at the same time as the inauguration, but if you're going to watch media tomorrow, don't watch the inauguration. Watch us.
No.
Now,
3 to 6 p.m. Pacific.
Louise, you were about to say something.
Well, tomorrow's Black Monday. We're supposed to do I'm going to do nothing. No shopping, no internet, no nothing, except for the readings. But I just want to say how hopeful it makes me feel to see this community and all the wise remarks that people have added to our discussions. Chin up, everybody.
Yeah, and
The questions. Yes, Facebook Live. Yes, YouTube. Same bat channel. Different bat time. Same bat channel.
Anne, did you have anything else?
No, there was a comment that started the line there from a guy named Andrew who said that maybe I served with his brother because he was in the medical unit, and I just wanted to acknowledge that.
If it was
I'll
Andrew
let you
Roberts,
guys-
it's his brother Joe, I think.
I'll let
Yeah.
you guys carry that on. But I want to remind you guys also, tomorrow is a National Day of Service. It is Martin Luther King Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget, for all of the darkness that Trump has brought to the land, Martin Luther King moved so many markers forward that we can't let our disgust with Trump let us forget that it is a day that when it was made a holiday, it was made a day of service. And remember what the world, I mean, Trump would take us back to a world that didn't have a Martin Luther King in it. Okay. And erase everything he accomplished. And we just need to remember some of the things he's accomplished that, you know, or some of the things he was part of, because just like this book wasn't just me, the civil rights movement wasn't just Martin Luther King.
Nope.
It was people working together to help each other. And that's what we got to keep doing.
Speaking of which, I want to plug my dad, who maybe he's watching, I don't know, but he marched on Washington with Martin Luther King in 1963.
Oh,
And heard the I Have a
Good for
Dream.
him.
So,
Wonderful.
Good for
So,
him. They're all
everybody
warriors.
wave goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.